right. I'm Kennedy Mulwa with many other names that I usually add on top depending on where I am. So pretty much everyone knows me by a different name. In Cape Town, I go by Ken. And among other circles, of course, in Cape Town, like Ken from Kenya, it can be a lot of other things. My Kamba name is Kioko from Kenya. Kioko means morning, like morning, afternoon, evening, so morning. Because I was born early morning, and I don't know that my parents wanted for me to be waking up early morning or what. Yeah, if that was the intention, it's not been working lately. I'm not an early morning person unless I need to go somewhere. Yeah, so that's basically my name. I'm a Kenyan. I've been living in Kenya all my life before I came to Cape Town. And when I was in Kenya, I was a church musician, and I was also a choir director at Bel Canto, which is a group I formed. So basically that was my interaction with music. I used to part-time as a piano tutor as well, but that was really on the side. And so I found church music to be quite important for me. It pretty much shaped a lot of my years in terms of my musical development and my choral development as well. And I also got interested now while doing church music. I got interested in cultural music and the concepts of inculturation and how they work in the country. I was really keen to bring in aspects of African music into my church choir. Of course, in addition, not in exclusion to other types of music. I wanted it to be sort of an all-round kind of experience for the church, for the congregation, and for everyone. And that's how my interest in inculturation brought me to UCT, because I came here with the intention of trying to combine these two worlds of African cultures and Christianity, and to see how these things work in practice, especially because I was coming from an urban area where people are from all over the place, and how different people from different backgrounds could have, cultural expressions and meanings in a space where it's cosmopolitan, it's metropolitan, and so on. So that was my main interest with my research, and I focused my study on Nairobi. I'm classically trained as a musician, so that was, of course, an interest of mine. But I also tried to bring in folk songs, folk music, to bring in African-American spirituals, for example, and just do a mix and bring an all-round group. But my background is classical. I think it came from mostly a curiosity that I developed earlier on. So my undergrad, I did it in law, not in music. And in my legal studies, there was a lot of questioning things. Is this really how it is? Are things exactly how they appear to be? And from that curiosity, I started questioning things that I had been taught in life. Whether it's culture, whether it's religion, whether it's, education itself. I was just in that curious space of trying to reestablish my conception of some of these things. And so I started questioning, among other things, my conception of culture, my own culture especially. Because growing up, we were taught, because I learned my language and all those things earlier on in life, and it was in school actually. But the irony was, as soon as we finished learning it, we were told, no, you can't speak this language in school. When in school, you must speak English. And if you don't, there's punishment for that. So when I got to this curious phase, I was really trying to understand why is it that we could learn these things in class and then outside of that class you can't use them. So that's where my curiosity came from. And so I started seeing all these patterns, whether it's in church music, what instruments are not allowed, where are they from, why are they not allowed in church, for example. And I noticed some African instruments don't feature at all. I was curious, why don't they? Is it by choice? Is it church canon and stuff like that? So that's where my interest sort of picked up, and now I went into this area. Some of them are more historical than contemporary, some of the information that I'm finding. So for example, about instruments that were banned by the missionaries who introduced Christianity. And I mean, we know it's right that there was this obsession with African rhythm and so on and so forth, that Africans are all about rhythm. It may be partly true, but then it's presented in such a way that that's the only thing that they know. as far as music goes, rhythm, then nothing else. I mean, from what I've been reading, what I see emerging from these discussions is you guys have rhythm, we have everything else. That sort of dichotomy, which I find to be problematic. I think pretty much every component of what I would call music is present in African music. So some tribes actually have melodic instruments, lyres, lutes, and stuff like that. But these instruments are not used in church, interestingly. They are used in so many other occasions, but not in church. So in liturgical music, I think drums are the most commonly used African instruments in most of the churches that I've been to. And that's both rural and urban. There's almost an imperial imposition of you guys only know your rhythm, so will only allow your rhythm into church. It's something that I'm still exploring as a possibility. In terms of interventions, I've seen a lot of efforts around, not just in Kenya, but around the continent. I think there's this gentleman called Dave Dagi in South Africa, who was doing enculturation among the Xhosa. But for him, it was about people developing their own music, Xhosa music, and so on. He was really intervening in terms of compositions. What I'm trying to see and how it can work is, outside of compositions, how people can find cultural expressions in places where culture is not homogeneous, where it's a mix of so many other things. And that's why I'm focusing on urban areas. So far, I see patterns that people tend to adopt practices that are universal. So either they'll choose to do English songs, for example, because they presume everyone must understand English because it's an urban area, everyone knows English. Or in my case, in Kenya, everyone is presumed to know Swahili. So Swahili is a very common language in terms of liturgical music and liturgy itself. There is a bit of other African languages, but these are there's no clear pattern of what comes when or who sings what. And that's why I'm trying to see what sort of intervention can happen there. Because I also noticed a curiosity among the congregation that they also want to know other languages. I was studying among the Catholic Church, and as you know, it has like this standard liturgy of how things run beginning to end. So whichever language you choose, someone would have an idea what's happening at this point. If it's the Kyrie, for example, whichever language you do it, someone will know we're doing the Kyrie. And so there was that curiosity to know how do we do the Kyrie in this other language? How do we do it in this other language? And so on and so forth. And that's something that would encourage. That sort of curiosity brings this open space where even if you're not experiencing your own culture, you can experience other people and appreciate how different people see things and different perspectives. I just think people need to learn to appreciate the differences that exist among people as well as the similarities, and to understand that there are different perspectives in worldviews, in ways of being. So I don't necessarily need to speak Swahili when I'm here, when I'm in Cape Town. I don't need to impose it on anyone else to speak. But I need to have that perspective that, oh, I've met someone who speaks Zulu here. They don't speak Swahili, so how do they view things? It's not always from a point of difference necessarily. It could be things that bring us together, and I would hope that a lot of things bring us together more than apart. And so one of the questions that I've been grappling with as well in my studies is whether culture is, as a concept, whether it's what we express or whether it's what people see from outside. Because sometimes we project things and then people see other things from what we project. And so it's not necessarily limited to language. It's more about ways of being and just understanding that there is so much perspective in the world. And despite all those differences, we are all similar. Well, Nairobi is as cosmopolitan as you can find in the country. So Kenya as a country has over 40 different tribes. It could be 50 by now because we keep discovering. I don't call it discovering, but we just realize how little we know as we go on. So it could be as well over 50. And so Nairobi has pretty much all of those represented in one way or the other, in addition to foreign internationals and so on. So it's a city beaming with just people from different backgrounds. In terms of dominance, I think it's probably based on statistics. It's probably just in line with the rest of the country. So of course there are main tribes in the country, and statistically speaking you expect them to be also the main tribes in Nairobi. But it's not one dominant tribe, it's like a couple. It's just a question of census rather than expression. I think everyone feels pretty much on the same level in Nairobi. Hardly do you approach a stranger from the perspective of what's your tribe. You know, there's always that sense of this guy could be anyone in this country, could be from anywhere. So I don't feel like there's that level of dominance in terms of who can own which space in Nairobi. Everyone can be anywhere. Let's say, I don't know in what order, but these groups, I would expect them to be dominant in the country and probably Nairobi as well. So Luhya, Luo, Kalenjin, Kikuyu, Kamba, Kisi. I'll keep going on and then I'll end up mentioning 40. But those, in whichever order it could be, yeah. I love those conversations of how people must view their communities. My ideal community is where you choose your own tribe, where you come from the self and you create your own identities and your habits and all those things. And then you find people with whom you share your ways of being, and that's your tribe. Let's say basically not people who you associate with because of your biological accidents of happening in this world. So not where you are born, not who you are born to, not what religion you're born into and all those things. Like now you choose yourself. You can choose the same things in the end, but coming from you. It's an ideal situation. I don't think it's happened yet. And I think that's how people should look at human interactions. It shouldn't be something that's imposed top down, that you have to behave this way because this is where you were born and all that stuff. It doesn't make sense. But it tends to be that if people connect long enough, they'll form a community. And the essence of a community is to impose how that community exists. Obviously, people need to know how to coexist, but I think it should be negotiated.